My name is Carlton G. Arenas, and I'll be reporting alleviation of flood. Alleviation means to make something easier to bear, lessen, or relieve from a certain damage. Flood is an overflow of water into land that is normally dry. So, alleviation flood means a technique or practice of preventing or controlling floods, also mitigating the risk of floods. Mitigation and risk transfer measures. Mitigation is defined by the Federal Emergency Management Administration as sustained action taken to reduce or eliminate long-term risks to people and property from hazard. Traditionally, mitigation is divided into structural and non-structural options, but in this topic, we'll only be focusing on non-structural options. So first is the structural mitigation measures. Structural measures alter the characteristic of flood and reduce the probability of flooding in the location of interest. And some examples of structural measures are levees, flood walls, seawalls, dams, floodways and spillways, channel, controlled overtopping, levee armoring, and seepage control. Next is non-structural mitigation measures. Non-structural mitigation measures alter the impact or the consequences of flooding and have little to no impact on the characteristics of the flood. Non-structural measures vary in cost and effectiveness and the physical and political effort required to implement them. The selection of which measure to use is a function of the location in which it will be employed, the availability of funds, and public acceptance use. Examples of non-structural mitigation measures are structure elevation, natural system, risk mapping, hazard forecasting, early warning system and emergency plans, land use planning and zoning, construction standard and building codes, acquisition and relocation, and insurance. First is structure elevation. By raising a structure above the expected flood level, flood damages can be prevented. Behind an accredited levee, if a flood greater than 1% annual chance flood occurs, there could be some damages to such elevated properties but considerably less than if the structure had been at the base flood elevation. So, ito example ng ganung structure na naka-elevate. Also, elevation includes moving essential equipment from low-lying elevation within a structure to the areas that would not be subjected to flooding. Having building support systems such as computers, heating and air conditioning units, and electrical station located in the basement areas puts the functionality of the entire building. Next is natural systems. Naturally existing, restored, or developed wetlands, as well as land in periodic cultivation, can store overflow waters from riverine flooding and help reduce downstream impacts. Wetlands also provide a natural barrier to storm surge inundation. Coastal sand dunes protect structure built behind them and help slow down coastal erosion and also immediate impact of rising storm surge. Floodways built to relieve flood pressure can also provide ecosystem benefits. This natural system can be effective in reducing flooding behind levees with interior drainage problem. So next is risk mapping. Flood risk mapping is the process of establishing the spatial extent of risk by combining information on probability and consequences. Risk mapping requires combining map of hazard and vulnerabilities. Accurate mapping of risks provides those living or working in flood-prone areas in front of or behind levees with the information necessary to make rational decisions in developing their personal or corporate flood risk management strategies. Next is hazard forecasting, early warning system, and emergency plans. Detailed weather forecasts of the path and severity of a tropical storm and accurate prediction of stages or heights of flood rivers enable government officials and the public to make decisions to evacuate or move valuable properties from high hazard areas. Next is land use planning and zoning. Land use planning refers to the practice whereby landowners, developers, municipalities, and other professionals collectively work to approve a land-based project, following principles that promotes an appropriate social and environmental effect, while also employing resources efficiently. Wise land use is at the center of non-structural flood mitigation activity and is an effective tool for reducing risk at the community level. Land use planning implements public policy to direct how land in a given area is used. Next is construction standard and building codes. So, construction standard and building codes can be developed at any level of government, but they are enforced at the local level. While codes provide for public safety, they also prescribe practices and measures that directly address known causes of disaster damages. Damages can be significantly reduced by attention to modern construction standard and building codes. Next is acquisition and relocation. Acquisition or relocation of properties that are repetitively flooded, substantially damaged, or flood-related project construction have been supported by FEMA and USACE, allowing many communities to deal with the challenges of these frequent flood losses. When land is not suitable or only marginally suitable for development or agricultural activity, that land can be acquired and placed into public use for either environmental or recreational purposes to enhance the overall quality of life in the community. And lastly, insurance. Through the purchase of insurance, some of the financial risk of living on a floodplain behind a levee is transferred for a premium from the individual to the entities that provide insurance. Floodplain managers tend to consider this a mitigation technique, when in fact, unlike physical measures that reduce damage, insurance does not reduce damages, but simply compensates the affected parties for these losses. And that's all. Thank you.